So we'll just start. Okay, initial thoughts on Kennedy.
Yeah. He was the first Catholic president, and back then, Democrat didn't equate with abortion because it just, it wasn't part of there was none back in those days. And so he seemed like a reasonable man. The main thing people were worried back then was the Cold War with Russia. And he was very strong against that, against the communists. He's very anti-communist, more so than his father even. And so he was very acceptable as a presidential candidate. He was made a very attractive candidate. He was very well spoken, and they had the perfect family. She was so pretty and quiet and reserved. And anyhow, but yeah, my folks and Adrian's folks voted for him. Our friends, we had two of them. Larry had a convertible, my brother Larry another. So we decorated our cars and went out to Airport Road, and there were all kind of people lining the Airport Road and the highway and everything. And so we got to let confetti and balloons go and everything. And he looked over and waved at us because we made enough noise. But when he was coming back out from Lawrence Stadium, there weren't very many people along the road. So we went out along the highway there, where NTB is or whatever. And he was still sitting up in his back of his convertible. And so we just waved and everything, and he waved at us as we got real close to him that way, But Adrian had been at Lawrence Stadium, and he got to shake hands with him, actually. So, yeah, we were okay with him. It was cool. Very sad when he died. So, okay, what else we need?
Okay.
What was the meaning?
What was it like meeting him, shaking his hands, waving at him?
Oh, exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It was exciting. Yeah, he was probably the youngest and most, I don't know what you would say, attractive candidate. He was very well-spoken, very funny. His jokes were always about himself or teasing his brothers or something. He came from a big family, and I guess that's partly why we identified with him. They were a big Catholic family. And so you kind of think, well, you got that in common with them. And so anyhow.
Okay. What were you doing when you found out about the shooting?
Yeah, that's right. Driving home from Topeka, yeah.
Yep. Okay, what were you thinking or feeling when you heard about it?
Very shocked, afraid that it was a communist attack and that there might be more people being killed. And that's what they were thinking. The government was thinking the same thing. Mm-hmm. They were getting the correct people in the correct places in case there would be a bombing or something like that. Yeah, it was very, very frightening, and I would say for at least until the funeral, which was a number of days later, the whole country just shut down. I mean, that's all people did was sit and watch television and watch all the wall-to-wall news on what was the latest thing to happen. It was very, very sad time. Very sad time. I'm sure some people went to work, but some didn't. Yeah.
How long was it until you figured out who actually did it?
Oh, that was very quick. They found him quickly, Oswald, and arrested him. And they were taking him from one place to another, and most people were watching it on TV. And what was the guy's first name? Jack Ruby stepped up out of the crowd there where the police were taking him from one place to another and put a gun in his stomach and shot Oswald. Mm-hmm. So that's how he died. And I believe that's right. And then what happened to Ruby? Did he die? Somehow he got put in prison or something and ended up dying in prison, and everybody kind of wondered. All the witnesses were it was very much appeared to be a planned conspiracy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyhow, a lot of people had their opinions. At first we thought it was Fidel Castro and the communists, and after a while there were other conspiracies came up. You've probably learned about them. My opinion is it could have been Lyndon Johnson. He was the vice president. He stood to gain. It was in Texas. That was his state. He was kind of known to be somewhat corrupt, and he would be able to cover up something like that. He would have had the power. He's a very powerful man. And him and Kennedy didn't get along. They did not get along. The only reason Kennedy took him for vice president is because it's like the same reason Reagan had to take H.W. Bush for vice president. That's your biggest opponent, and he'll bring states that you can't get, and you'll need them to get elected, and so you have to take your enemy as your vice president.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I just thought there was a fair chance that it could have been him.
So how'd you kind of feel about Johnson after that?
Didn't like him at all. He wasn't a good president. Actually, when it came to, he filled out that term, and I don't think he ran for the next one, because they were just running for, at the time Kennedy, the time he was killed, he was president, and he was just beginning to campaign for re-election the next year. And so by the time that came up, how did that go? I can't remember exactly how long Johnson was. Maybe he won the first election, but then he didn't win on running for a second term. He just didn't run. And that was kind of unusual because he was a very hard-driving, politically climbing man. And it just seemed kind of funny that he wouldn't run again, but he wasn't a good president in a lot of ways. Took us down a lot of very liberal roads.
So do you think, did a lot of people share the opinion that Johnson had something to do with it?
Oh, there were a fair amount, yeah. Yeah, and then there were other ones that it was someone hired from Cuba. Some said the mob did it, that it was a mob hit or something. Who knows? Johnson is an easy one because it all happened in his state, where he was very powerful, and it would have been easy to cover it up.
Okay, what is like one thing that you remember the most, or was like most shocking about it? About all of it?
Yes, I can tell you exactly. There's a picture of them on the plane. Kennedy's body is in the bottom of the plane in a casket, and the vice president is taking his oath of office, and his wife is on one side of him, and Mrs. Kennedy is on the other side, and she still had blood stains, down her suit, and she just looks devastated. She just looks devastated. So that's one thing I'll always remember is that. It was very pitiful. She had little John was just a couple of years old maybe, and I think she had just got finished having a miscarriage. She had lost a couple of kids at least, and so that her whole part of the situation was real pathetic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have anything to add about the whole situation?
About the whole situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, anything like pertaining to Kennedy at all, your feelings or anything like that?
I would have liked to have seen him have a second term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think his brother was his Attorney General, Bobby Kennedy, and he was even more hard and strong than Jack was on things. And after Jack died, he got a lot softer on things and went a lot more to the liberal, and I always wondered if maybe he was protecting himself or something like that, didn't want to anger the wrong people, or I don't know. And then he ended up getting shot and killed anyhow, so yeah. Maybe that explains Teddy Kennedy. Total tip.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you mentioned we can also go into the Cold War about this too. You mentioned how you thought it was communist. You want to talk about the Cold War and how that affected you too?
The big effect on our childhood. When we were in school, you had tornado warnings, where we had air raid warnings, and we would be taught what to do if we were in the classroom and the air raid sirens went off. There were public service announcements on television what to do, because the communists had, Nikita Khrushchev slammed his shoe on the on the table at might have been the United Nations, or was it over at some big summit? We will bury you. Your children will grow up under communism. And the trouble is, they almost are now.
Mm-hmm.
They almost are. Yeah. They just went from a violent to a non-violent way of accomplishing it. But it was very scary. You know, we lived at the corner of West Street and Kellogg.
Mm-hmm.
Every time there was a siren, I thought, is it an air raid siren? Is it that? My dad and mom talked to us all one time. If you're at school, they're going to want you to stay at school. We don't want you to stay at school. We want you to come home. If you all get together, you can be home in 5 minutes. You can run across the field and be home. We're going to try to make it out in the country. We're going to try to go out, away.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the big population area. You want to get away from the population. You want to get as far away as you could away from McConnell
Mm-hmm.
Air Force Base, because it would be a target. But also the airport would have been a target. And
Where did you go to school?
Christ the King, and then Sacred Heart, which is where Newman is now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it had a big effect on our life growing up.
So, like, how old were you when that happened?
Grade school.
Grade school?
Oh, when Kennedy?
Well, both.
Well, when Kennedy died, it was in 1960, so I would have been a junior in high school.
And then what about, like, the Cold War? When did that span?
Forever. I grew up under it. I don't remember a time when it wasn't.
Okay. Also, forgot to ask you, when were you born? Like, what's your date of birth?
Oh, January 30th of 1944.
Okay, trying to think what else to ask. Okay, so you said, you were always scared that it was an air raid siren. Like, when did that finally wear off? When were you, like, finally able to relax
Feel
about
better
that?
about it?
Yeah.
Actually, I felt better after we got married and moved out here. At least I was away. I was away from there, and we didn't have a basement at home. We didn't even have a basement to go into. And we had a basement here. And you'd have been a little more safe in a basement, and you certainly would have been closer to getting even further away from where the ground zero might be. But you always thought about it, that it was a possibility. And then, of course, Mom was always had told us early on about the message of Fatima, that Russia would spread her airs throughout the world, and the things that would have to suffer because of the airs of communism. And we were lucky that we didn't have anything like that happen anyhow, so far.
Mm-hmm.
So far. Now we had that stupid idiot in North Korea going crazy. That guy's delusional.
Are there any, like, memories in particular from, like, your, like, from the Cold War experiences, like, your drills or anything like that? Anything in particular, or, like, one moment in particular that you thought it was, like, actually happening?
Oh, if there was a time when I actually thought it might.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember any. I remember for quite a while I didn't want to go to any crowded place, like a movie or a baseball game or something like that, because I might not be able to get out quick enough to get home soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
Remember those?
And was that something that was, like, instilled by the media, or you were just smart about, or your parents told you about?
I don't know, a little bit of both. A little bit of both. The parents were particularly on top of it, not just my parents, both grandparents as well. Adrian's the same way, parents and grandparents. They were very aware of it. And school. At school the sisters told us. It was just a very much of a possibility. Other countries were. When I was in high school, sophomore, junior year, somewhere in there, there was the Hungarian uprising in, I think it was 1956, and people eventually came over here from there that were refugees from that, and we had two of them in our class, two girls in our class that came over to get away from the communists, because the communists had rolled in with tanks and everything and crushed people, and they were somehow able to escape and eventually make their way over, to our country. And the Wichita Diocese evidently took some, and we had 2 of the girls in our class. Anna Marie Toussaint and Valera, can't remember her last name, Vogel or some name like that. Yeah.
Was that kind of common for you to see
Refugees?
Yeah. No?
Mm-hmm. No, I guess that's why I remember it so well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they weren't poor. I mean, Valera's family, she dressed a little more, whatever. But Anna Marie, you could tell, probably came from a more wealthy family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.